Hello, everybody. My name is Aaron Canola, and welcome back once again to another edition of the Movie Battleground. Hope everybody's doing well tonight. And we are here to bring back some newer players to the league, one of whom just made their debut a few weeks ago. But we already kind of, the way that match kind of shook out, we already had a second one in place. So here we are once again. But we have Sean Sandberg versus Don Tucker. Now, technically, since a lot of people know that I take records into account when we're scheduling, you may look at this and say, well, one person's 1-0 and the other's 0-1. That may seem unfair to an extent. But I think this could be potentially a very even match, and I don't think anyone should write either one of these guys off because both had strong debuts, and in both of their matches, we went to the tiebreaker blind round. Obviously, one then took the win, the other did not, but it was so close between both of these guys that I think either way, this will be an interesting match to see where they go on round number 2. So to move on to the competitors, I'm going to bring in first, coming in with a record of 0 wins, 1 defeat. He is Don Tucker. Don, welcome back. In terms of obviously both production and upload, it's only been a few weeks since you made your debut. For anyone curious as to why that happened, originally that match was supposed to be, as we talked about there, a 3-way match. And Don had asked if it would be possible to put a solo match in place as well. Obviously, that match then got delayed and then got shrunk to a 2-person match, and it just coincided that these two aired much closer together than originally planned. But you do have that game under your experience. How do you feel coming back for a second time?
Yeah, no, I'm really excited, man. I had a great time in the first match against Joe. I know Joe pretty well, so it was probably a better way to start in the league, having just somebody you're more familiar with. But yeah, definitely excited to get back into this, man. I really love debating this stuff, so absolutely excited to be here.
And so to go off of that, obviously, you go from your debut match where you're playing against somebody who you actively work with, very well, to someone like Sean, who, as far as I'm aware with, this is the first time you guys are even meeting, so there's a lot of unfamiliarity. In terms of like preparing yourself for it, what's the difference between preparing for someone you know versus someone you don't?
I mean, I just kind of don't know what angle he's going to come from. I mean, I watched his first match just to sort of get an idea of how he kind of thinks, but that's not enough, obviously, to really get a great idea. But yeah, no, I actually like this a little more going against somebody I don't know, so more challenging. So I love that part of it.
Absolutely, man. Well, we're going to go ahead and sit you in the back and bring in your opponent. Coming in with a record of 1 win, no defeats, he is Sean Sandberg. Sean, welcome back. Your first appearance of the season. We were able to get you in last year, but for all intents and purposes, you're still a rookie with that 1 match under your belt. And not only did you have a tough opponent in Brandon Cohen, but technically you retired him because unfortunately he wasn't able to continue with us this year. That has nothing to do with that, but I just thought it'd be fun to say that. So
he's a really good player.
No, he was excellent, and he definitely pushed you on that first match, but you did come out on top. So how are you feeling coming into your second match?
A little nervous. Like it's tough to find time for these things, especially when you get older and you have more responsibilities and stuff like that. You know what I mean? But no, I'm really excited. Don seems like an extremely nice guy, and so I'm looking forward to discussing movies more than anything else. You know what I mean? Like, don't get me wrong. I'm going to have my point. He's going to have his point, but hopefully we can create like almost more of a dialectic sort of environment than rather a debate. I mean, don't get me wrong. We're both going to want to win, but hopefully it's a healthy discussion in terms of, us both, getting our points across.
Yeah, absolutely. I think different competitors find different ways of going about it. And I think some of the more conversationalist ones have certainly been some of the more interesting because if you're not constantly screaming over each other, you can actually understand what they're trying to say. Who would have thought that that'd be a tactic, but it is. So we're going to go ahead and bring Don back in, and we are going to jump into this. Movie Battleground is a game that is a best of 5 rounds. It is a first to 3 points wins the match. Each round of debate is worth 1 point. If a competitor happens to pick up the first 3 points in a row, that will be a victory by knockout. And if at the end of 4 rounds we have a 2-2 tie, we do have a tiebreaker called the blind round. You guys have already had experience with that, so you're far more advanced than some of our other rookies. But let's hope for your guys' sake we don't have to do that again. we'll discuss that more if we have to. In terms of the actual debate, you guys have had the 4 questions. You've had as much time as we can allot for you to prepare. The way that this will work is you will have 60 seconds each to open your argument. That'll be followed by a 2-minute solo speaking period to expand and explain your argument. There will be a 4-minute open discussion where you'll go back and forth, trade points, and try and get as many blows in as possible, followed by a 60-second closing argument to wrap everything up. Following that, I have 2 judges backstage in the form of Tato and Frenchie waiting to come on screen. They will make their deliberation based off of your arguments. Should they not agree, I will also be taking notes tonight, and I will be a tiebreaker should we need it. But they will be the ones calling the shots in that sense. So with that said, guys, do you have any questions, or are we good to go?
Good to go. Yeah.
All right. So both in a seasonal sense when it comes to film, but in a recording sense, when we're recording this, we are fresh off of the Oscars. And the Oscars was something really special this year because we had 5 nominees. In my own personal opinion, I'd argue that there's more to that. We have 5 nominees every year, but we had 5 nominees this year who I think genuinely you could argue all had, in terms of performance, a legitimate shot at winning that award. And we had 5 first-time nominees this year, which is not something that happens very often. Usually there's at least one person thrown in there that's kind of an industry standard, a top-of-the-line actor getting that nomination. And one of those guys who has picked up a few nominations and a win for himself is Mr. Christian Bale. He is considered the pinnacle of what this industry can sort of work towards in terms of how he prepares for roles, the variousness of his performances, to the extent where most people don't even know that he's not American. He's Welsh. He's not from America, but he's done so many films, so many varying U.S. accents that people don't even realize that at this point. It's the equivalent of, like, I don't know, like John Boyega is another one. Most people don't know he's British because you hardly ever hear him use his actual accent in films. I realize comparing Christian Bale to John Boyega is a really weird comparison, but Bale's an excellent actor. The question is, what is the best performance of Christian Bale in a film? And I think these guys have pulled out not only 2 excellent films, but 2 films from very different points in his career. So I'm curious to see how that comes into it. So behind the scenes, Sean, you do have the higher record. And at the time of setting this up, for what it's worth, Don hadn't recorded when we first set this up. So either way, Sean was the higher ranked player. And he had chose to go first on questions 2 and 4. So Don, you're going to go first on question 1 here as I go ahead and bring in the timer. I'm going to wish you guys both the best of luck on this. And I'm going to throw it over to you, Don. Time starts when you begin speaking.
Okay, so this is an interesting question to to get. Obviously, Christian Bale, performance after performance, has always been at the top. The reason I picked the movie I picked is I think this is one of the movies and one of his best movies that he gets to really show his full range of emotions in this movie. And I went with American Psycho, because he has to play this, debonair type businessman during the day, but he is this psychotic, insane person at night that brutally murders people and lures them in. So he has to show the charming side of his personality. There's just so much in this movie that he gets to do. And I really think, even though it's an earlier movie in his career, it does show the range of what we see now from him. So that is the movie that I picked, American Psycho.
All right. That'll be time on the opening minute. Sean, over to you for yours. You're still muted.
What makes Christian Bale performances so great is his attention to detail and the ability to show that range, much like Don talked about. For me, I chose Ken Miles from Ford v. Ferrari. He brought the man to life in so many different ways. And if you take a real solid look at what he wound up doing physically for the things, not in terms of his, weight gains or weight losses or whatever, but even just the subtle nuances of the way that he sticks his chin forward when he's in a racing helmet, or his ability to show this fiery side to Ken Miles where he's so passionate about what he's doing. But then you also see the opposite side of that with his time with his son, where he's explaining things to him about racing and how much you can see just how much absolutely all of this means. And the level of meticulousness that goes into a performance like that with a character like that just shows the range of Christian Bale to a degree that's unbelievable.
And time. All right, so we have American Psycho versus Ford v Ferrari on the table. We are going to go ahead and go back over to you, Don. 2 minutes on the clock to continue when you're ready.
So, yes, Ford v Ferrari, obviously, we all know is a great movie. Nobody can deny the how, I mean, just how amazing that movie is. Well directed, well acted, all across the board. Matt Damon pulls off a great performance in this movie. I mean, it's really a great movie. But again, we're going with the best performance by Christian Bale. And yes, he does give a great performance in this. We're not denying that. Like you said, the chin movement, the little things. Of course, that is always great. But a real performance in a movie is the emotional weight that it carries, and the emotional weight that he carries in this movie is insane. I mean, it's a crucial look into the ego of high society. It's a funny but yet deranged and, for lack of a better word, psychotic movie. The way he has to sort of be this person during the day in front of everybody and then turn this other side of him, the charming side of him, on at night when he's going out to the clubs and meeting these men and women, and then getting them to come back, and then just the brutality of how he meticulously, while there's basically somewhat conscious, knowing what he's doing, he's setting all this stuff up for them. It's an amazing roller coaster of a performance. And getting back to Ford v Ferrari, yes, he's again great in that movie, but it is sort of and I say this very lightly, it's a one-note performance in the sense that there's not a full range of emotions that he goes through in the movie. Yes, he has a few moments where he heightens, anger and things like that, and we get all those nuances. But in American Psycho, he just fully goes for it, and it's such a great. It's just a fun movie to watch on top of it because he's so psycho in it. It's so crazy. I will yield the rest of my time.
All right, so that'll be it for Don. Sean, we'll go over to you next. When the clock hits 0, you are good to go ahead and start.
Okay, so for starters, I think our performances are far more similar that we both picked than we'd actually like to mention, because you do talk about how Bale has to be two completely different people when it comes to who he is in the day and who he is at night. And it's the exact same thing in Ford v Ferrari. During the day, he's this absolute maniacal, psychotically obsessive racer and mechanic. And then at night, when he goes home, he has to be that father figure and he has to be a loving husband. It's the thing is, there is that dichotomy. The big difference between our performances, though, is that one is very subtle in a lot of different ways. Whether it be his reaction to Shelby talking about, you're going to build a car that's going to beat, you're going to build a Ford that's going to beat Ferrari. And how long did you tell him it would take you? 200-300 years? And he just goes 90 days. And you just see his response to it. He just thinks it's hilarious. And every single time that dude is on screen, he steals every scene he's in Ford v Ferrari. Now, to put that in perspective between our two films, in American Psycho, most of the supporting characters are kind of these high-class yuppies, and they kind of all blend into one kind of character. Like Paul Allen and Josh Lucas's character, and a lot of them, they're very interchangeable. Even Reese Witherspoon, who's really, really good in so many other things, is kind of just the stuck-up fiance. The only person in American Psycho who I think kind of has an electric performance in the short time that he's in, aside from Bale, is probably Willem Dafoe. And if you contrast that with my film, you have Matt Damon, who has an electric performance, Tracy Letts, who has an electric performance, Josh Lucas is great in the film, and the scenes with his son, the kid who plays his son, is absolutely phenomenal. So I think it just, more than anything, it's really what you value out of a performance when it comes to which one you enjoy more. If you go with the operatic performance, it's definitely American Psycho that you're going to prefer. But when it comes to a subtle performance, it's definitely Ford v Ferrari.
And time. All right. Apologies there with the timer. There was a slight blip on the internet for a moment on my end. We're going to go ahead and move into the 4-minute open discussion. As always, I ask that while you guys are obviously trying to get your points in, be respectful of each other. Don't cut everyone off at the first sentence. But you'll find a rhythm for it as you go along. With that said, the timer will start back up when the first competitor speaks.
Okay, so I'd like to address one thing really quickly. Bale's performance is very far.
Yeah, no, and I said, like I said, I'm saying that very lightly. Yeah.
Because you do have the like absolutely furious outbursts, whether it be him banging the trunk in that scene so he can fit the friggin' so he can fill the compartment, that way he can race. Then you have the elation of him when he does win, when he's about to win Le Mans. But
Sure.
The big thing about his performance, and you can see it in the moment where he's like going down those last few corners and he slows down to let Bruce McLaren and the other Ford come alongside him, is this is a guy, and you see it from even the scene where he chucks the wrench at Shelby. He gets fired up and he literally does things that just completely like screw himself over. And the one time where he's about to like get exactly what he wants, he decides to take one for the team and actually do what's best for the big photo op and whatnot.
Sure.
And when you see Bale go through all those emotions within the span of probably 30 seconds, it is a master class in acting. It shows the level of maturity that he's gotten to.
Sure. And again, I'm not taking. Sure. Yeah. And again, I'm not taking anything away from his performance. It's, to me, though, those are moments in the movie where in American Psycho, you really, every scene, you're like, is he like, when he's with, his business friends and he has to be this normal person, there are things that happen that set him up. Like, is he going to lose it in this scene? Like, you don't know. He's always on the edge of that character. That's the hidden demon underneath. And I think he plays that so well. And when he gets to release at night and just be who he is, he's so magnetic. I mean, you can't not watch those scenes. And they happen just in succession, over, back to back to back. You set him up during the day. He's got to be this normal person. Oh, no, is he going to lose it because this dude just said something to him the wrong way? Then we get the outburst at night, where, again, in your movie, we get those moments, yes. But I think what you said at the end of the 2 minutes was exactly right. There's so many other great performances in this movie that hold this movie up, where Bale in American Psycho literally has to hold that movie up. And it holds up only because of him, because there are so many bad one-note, like you said, characters in the background that just don't really matter or contribute to the rest of the film, where Bale gets to do his thing in Ford v Ferrari and not really have that weight on his shoulders, which I think gives him the freedom to sort of have that just insane moments, like you said, but again, just moments that come in spurts.
Well, see, the thing is, though, like, it's not just it's every moment that he's on screen. It is absolutely every single time, whether it's him talking to Leo Beebe about, like what he'd wind up doing with the Mustang and defending his son, whether it be him, friggin' being at Le Mans, whether it be him talking to his wife about the fact, like he's going to be, racing with Shelby, whether it's his disappointment from, telling him, being told that he's not going to be going to Le Mans. It's like every single time that dude gets a moment to show exactly what that character is about, he comes up in spades. And the thing is, like I said before, it's not just the fact that there are other great performances. It's the fact that he shines above all of them. That's really the point of bringing those up. It's not just that, it's
I think, I don't know.
It's a supporting role, but the thing is, it's not, it kind of goes to like, what's better, the leading role or the supporting role? To me, it just depends on what you enjoy. But at the end of the day, Bale is just electric in absolutely every moment that he's in Ford v Ferrari.
And I think he's exactly the same in American Psycho. I would agree.
I think he is.
I think the consensus, no matter who wins the question, the consensus we're going to come to is nobody's going to walk away saying Bale's a bad actor.
Yeah, right.
No, best actor working by far.
Christian Bale is the best looking Dick Cheney's ever been. Like, it is. So we're going to go to the closings. Dawn, you are up first, so you have your final minute on the round ready to go when you are.
So again, I think where American Psycho is the superior performance in the movie is one, it does carry the movie, but it is the full range of a person going through just being a psychotic person, and he has one of the greatest lines that he delivers where he just says, I just want to fit in. It's so well delivered, and it's so creepy because you know who he is at this point, and it's so creepy. He gives such a great, funny, brutal, funny performance. He's so off-putting the entire movie. He has to carry the entire movie, and the performance is just it really is amazing, in my opinion, as a Bale performance. Ford v Ferrari, as it is, yes, a great performance. It's sporadic. It doesn't hold up the movie, and I just feel like it doesn't overall show who he is as a great actor as American Psycho did.
And time. All right, so we're going to go back over to you, Sean, for the final minute on the clock. Time starts when you begin speaking.
I think when it comes down to it, it really comes down to maturity. When it comes to, yes, Bale at the time was a young actor looking to have the biggest role of his career in American Psycho. Takes a lot of swings in that movie, and it can be very hammy at times. Now, you can say that actually adds to the performance because of his lack of understanding for human beings and whatnot. And that'd be totally fair. At the exact same time, the most human he has ever been on screen and the most natural he has ever been on screen is in Ford v Ferrari. His monologue that he gives to his son about knowing where his racing lines are and pushing the car and having to know where that is one of the best scenes ever. And he just goes, perfect lap. Can you see it? And to me, what Bale does in the performance in Ford v Ferrari is his perfect lap. There's not a bum note in it. It is flawless, pretty much.
And time. All right, guys, excellent start to this match. I'm going to go ahead and sit you guys in the back for the deliberation, as I will go ahead and bring the judges on screen. Normally, this is where I would fact check things, but as I am trying to take notes and judge these guys properly tonight, there won't be any fact checking. So we're just going to assume that everything they say is absolutely true, even if it's bullshit. I'll let the comments figure that one out. Jake, I'm going to go to you first. Who gets your vote, and what was the main selling point?
I got Sean here. He was able to counter that moments versus whole movie argument really well. So, and like the perfect lap thing that he said, and the great, how he was good among other great actors as well.
Yeah, and
okay.
I'm actually going for Dawn. I decided to break down all the phases, see who won every phase, and they were actually 2 for 2. So I had to really go on a deciding factor on was this the best movie or best performance? Because Dawn actually mentioned it, and Dawn confirmed that, I should say, that yes, a lot of the second characters were very similar. And Bale had to carry his weight, the movie on his shoulders, right? So that performance aspect of it really, really shined through. Where the other one, Sean's argument is, yeah, it's really good moments, good movies, but it's an ensemble thing. And, Bale is good in it, but because he had to carry his weight, the performance aspect and Sean's argument for me wins.
Okay. All right, so you're. I think you messed up.
Dawn.
You're going with Dawn. Okay,
Dawn.
Yeah, I was making sure because I heard you earlier, and then I think their names rhyme, so it may happen more than once tonight. So, all right, so we have one vote for Sean, one for Dawn. I'm going to say, as the showrunner, producer, the guy who has to sit through pretty much every match in one way or another, whether it's editing or being there physically. This is one of the best acting debates I've heard because I think you guys both brilliantly broke down the nuances of Bale as an actor and what he brings to each of these films. And the tiebreaker for me that does give the edge to Dawn on the point here is the fact that I think he did a good job at selling the fact that because some of what American Psycho has in its other performances isn't up to Bale's par, he does raise the movie to a level where we remember it and it is considered one of his best performances, and it's all on him. And while there is the nuance in Ford v Ferrari, the fact that he alone carries this, he would put enough behind it to sell me. But judges, thank you guys so much. I'm going to go ahead and sit you in the back. And I will bring the competitors back in as we're going to move on to question number 2. That was a great way to start it off, guys.
Tough one.
Excellent job there. And we're going to go ahead and jump into question number 2. And at the time of match upload, at least, We are about 1 week away from the release of Dungeons and Dragons: Honor Among Thieves, a movie that, at least as of I've been hearing, is potentially surprisingly very good. I think a lot of people kind of looked at this and went, I don't know. But a lot of the early screenings seem to be getting good reviews. Hopefully the movie turns out to be good and makes money, because God knows if anything's going to tank this month, it's probably going to be this one, that or Shazam. So we will see which one does worse. But Dungeons and Dragons falls into that genre of fantasy that is a genre in which the darker and darker you go, the harder it can be to sort of include all audiences, especially if we're talking about box office, right? You want movies that you can take the kids to. And throughout history, we've had all sorts of varying styles of fantasy films, and the ones that often get the best reviews are those darker fantasy films that really dive into those elements. And so the question that we have here is, which dark fantasy film is the best to introduce kids to the genre of all of these films? And I should say, because dark fantasy is one of those things where everyone kind of has their own unique specification of what that means. And here at the show, we do go very general with the definition. So as long as it meets a base requirement, it does qualify, as both of these films do. But which of these films is the best to introduce kids to? And you guys picked some great ones here. So we're going to go ahead and jump into it. Sean, you are up first on this one. So I'm going to give you the timer, and the 1 minute will be yours when you begin speaking.
When you go into a dark fantasy film and you're going to show it to a kid, the biggest challenge is the fact that, dependent on their age, it can wind up scaring the living crap out of them, or the themes can be so much that they either don't understand or it just makes them feel a little bit overwhelmed. That's part of the reason why I picked Willow. Willow, amongst having some really unbelievable performances from Val Kilmer and Warwick Davis, the rest of the cast, is just a very inviting film for a young person to watch. It's not just that it's a really good fantasy film. It's a really good film for a family to watch together. I can take that down.
Okay. So Willow is going to be the first pick on the board. Dawn, you're going to get your opening minute now. So once the clock rolls over to 0, you are good to go ahead and begin your opening minute.
So let's be honest. Kids don't care about the story. They want visual effects. They want to see cool lights and cool creatures and cool things on and things they can relate to on the screen. I went with Neverending Story. It's a movie about a kid that is bullied and finds this book in which he can, have this fantasy adventure that he eventually becomes interactive with. The special effects oddly hold up a little bit over time. Still obviously dated, but hold up to the most part. And again, just has a fun story that a kid can follow, where Willow is very incoherent, and it's really just visually, from a kid's perspective, boring. Now, I grew up loving Willow, don't get me wrong, but very, very visually boring, where I think Neverending Story just has a great ending to it, where we get Falcor with coming and scaring the bullies at the end, and him having his triumphant moment.
And time. All right, so we have Willow versus The Never-Ending Story. We're going to go ahead and jump back over to you, Sean. 2 minutes on the clock when ready.
To be frank with you, I think that The Never-Ending Story is a perfect name for that movie, because even as a kid while watching it, I was bored out of my mind. For some perspective, Willow has a 2 hour and 6 minute runtime. Never-Ending Story has a 1 hour and 42 minute runtime. And despite that additional 20 minutes, Willow feels like a breeze pacing wise. Now, as far as your comment about story goes, I think respecting your audience is definitely something that children's films, the very best of them, wind up doing. Now, with that, as a kid, I cared a lot about the story of a film, and I cared a lot about performance as well. Willow, in that regard, very much spoke to me as a kid. Never-Ending Story, on the other hand, despite all the flashing lights and Atreyu and everything, bored me to death. Like, absolutely bored me to death, to the point where I had to go back and literally like read the synopsis for this film, because I was just like, I remember absolutely nothing about it. And I know for a lot of people that may be surprising, but for me, like it did not work whatsoever. It just bored the crap out of me, and I did not remember it at all until like 20 years after the fact. I had to go back and check it out. But yeah, to me, like I think when it comes to Willow, it's actually a pretty simple story to understand. Keep the child safe, make sure that Bab Morta's taken care of, and destroyed, and basically, it's kind of just the same thing as something like The Mandalorian or The Last of Us. It's protect the child, take them to the place. It's not a difficult plot to understand, in my opinion. Anyways, yeah, concede my time.
All right, and that is, I apologize if you had conceded there, but that is time. All right.
Sorry,
We're going to go back over to you, Dawn.
We're going to go back over to you,
Dawn. 2 minutes on the clock. Time starts when you're ready.
Okay, yes. Willow is very simple, I guess, in that sense, but I don't remember. And again, I love this movie. I don't remember understanding any of that. It drags on so much. The meeting Mad Mardigan scene where, it's just them and he's in the cage. I mean, that drags on till the morning. Then they sleep and then they wake up and he's still there. Like that scene drags on pretty much for about 20 minutes, and it's very dry and boring. Nothing really is happening in it except for Val Kilmer having fun as a weird pirate. Neverending Story is not a slow burn. I don't see that at all. It's very fast-paced movie. You're constantly moving to different areas, different monsters, different weird things happening in the background, and it's not a very complicated story. It's a kid trying to figure out how to be brave and courageous in a world where he's being bullied and feels small. And I think any kid can relate to that story. I think that's actually a perfect story for kids to relate to. And then again, the triumphantness of it at the end. I mean, it's almost like a kid's Rocky story in a sense, where he overcomes and he gets to fly down over his bullies with Falcor, and they scare the crap out of him, and he gets his triumphant moment. And I don't see how. I don't understand how Neverending Story is a slow burn. We'll definitely get into that in the back and forth, but Willow is very slow paced. I mean, even the beginning, once they find the baby, it takes them about 20 minutes before they get onto the adventure. And once they're on the adventure, there's a lot of stopping and just sitting around and talking. And for kids, that's not how you want to introduce them to fantasy. You want them to have fun. You want them to be engaged with the monsters. And yeah, they get a little scared once in a while. That's fine. But, there's nothing in Neverending Story that's going to scare a kid to the point where they're going to have nightmares. I can't imagine that. I definitely don't remember that.
And time. All right. We're going to go ahead and head into the 4-minute open discussion. The timer will start when the first competitor speaks.
So I'm actually very interested. Yeah, no, I'm very interested in your point on how you think Willow is not a slow burn, but Neverending Story is a slow burn. It's just, I remember I watched this again, and even, like I said, things don't hold up in it, but in neither film they do. So I definitely think Willow is a slower burn.
I'm talking about from my perspective when I was a kid watching both of these films.
Okay.
And introducing a kid to these films, it really depends. I guess it just depends on what kind of kid you are. But for me,
Sure.
When I was a kid, the characters in a story were most important, and this, what was going on was most important. And Willow, much like you were talking about with, feeling triumphant and whatnot, basically it shows that the smallest person can make the biggest difference. It's the same thing that makes films like The Lord of the Rings great. Greatness from small beginnings in quite a
well, that's the same story in Neverending Story, because they're telling him at the end when he's reading the book, all he has to do is say the name, just say the name, and you can do all this. One little person can change the world and save the world, and that's the whole point of Neverending Story too.
Yeah, I mean it's a common fantasy trope.
Sure. Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Both of our films. But
Yeah.
no, when it comes to Willow, characters like Mad Mardigan do make things move quite quick. Like for me, at least, when it came
He's funny and he's comic relief for a kid. Yes, I will agree with that. Kids
Also-
will laugh at him. But I mean, visually though, I mean, you have the giant turtle that is a crazy scene where it's just he looks like a big, mountain that just kind of stands up out of nowhere. Again, I talked about the rock monster. Falcor is amazing. The snail, the little snail dude, and the troll person. I don't know if it's a man or woman, but there's a lot of visually intriguing things for kids in this movie. And like I said, the story is so great as far as the anti-bullying message. We already talked about the one little person can save the world. The wolf scene is great where he has to, again, that doesn't hold up as great as special effects wise, but it's a great scene where he really has to get, this message, and this is the furthering of the story at that point. Again, I don't remember them staying in places so long in Neverending Story as they do in Willow. It's just so much slowness and dialogue in Willow.
Yeah, see, and
the ending is very, very non-climatic. I mean, it's very quick. That ending is very quick in Willow.
Yeah, fair enough.
It's just, we kind of get those slow moments, and then when we finally get to we're going to beat Bath Morta and we're going to have this battle, it's just like...
I mean, the battle is quite grand in terms of scale.
No, there's great effects in it, yeah.
Yeah, like... Plus, you do get to see Mad Mardigan actually fucking wielding his swords and whatnot, which is an absolute treat. Like,
sure.
It is one of the biggest highlights of the film. But no, to be honest with you, I never found that Willow really dragged ever. Even if there were moments of talking and whatnot, I never felt like it detracted from the character development. I never felt like it detracted from the overall pacing of the film. It's like when you're on this sort of journey, you know what I mean? You're going to have to get to know who you're on the journey with. And so Willow taking the time to, explore the interactions between these characters and have funny moments. And even the moments with like those two tiny little guys, like which comes absolutely out of nowhere. When you're a kid, it kind of works perfect because that's exactly who that's designed to be, shot for.
Right. I just feel like with Neverending Story, you have this great interactive story, which actually, as the moviegoer and as the kid watching the movie, you really get to feel that interactiveness with the movie. And I think that would go a long way for kids. I mean, as I said, I remember watching this movie and just loving it as a kid.
Time. All right. So we're going to go on to the final minute here. Sean, you're back up. Time starts when you begin speaking.
At the end of the day, when it comes to Willow, you do have extraordinarily memorable characters in Mad Mardigan and Willow and, Bath Morta. It is basically a really good film to show to kids to introduce them to something before trying to get them to try to understand something a little bit more complicated. Maybe say like, the politics of like, the Lord of the Rings and whatnot. But yeah, no, overall, I think Willow's definitely, probably the best one to show to kids, despite the fact that I forgot to change my answer to The Secret of Nim.
Nice.
All right. Is that your time?
Yeah, it's my time.
Okay. All right. Just making sure. Don't want to cut anybody off.
Yeah, no, that's my time.
All right. So, all right, Dawn. So back over to you for the final minute. Time starts when you begin speaking.
Yeah, again, I feel like when we're talking about what is the best fantasy movie to introduce kids to, I think you have to go with the most visually stunning movie, which I think is Neverending Story, hands down. It has one of the best messages as far as anti-bullying and the sort of kid that is unsure of himself and uncourageous can be courageous and save the world at the same time. Not to mention it is a bit of ahead of its time in the way that it tells the story, like I said, with the interactiveness of it. But it's such an 80s fantasy film, so through and through an 80s fantasy film. The special effects to a degree hold up. We get a lot of fun moments in that movie where I feel like Willow overall just sort of drags. And yes, it's a fun scene, but it's not the greatest climax for a movie. And yeah, just very unappealing for children if you want them to interact in this world and love fantasy movies and what they can be. So.
All right. And that is time. Another good round, guys. I'm going to go ahead and put you in the back and bring the judges back on screen here for the deliberation. So, Frenchie, I'll go to you first on this one. As concise as you can hit it for me, who gets your vote and what was the main selling point?
For me, it was pretty equal throughout the whole thing. I'm not a fan of both movies, to be honest, so I pretty had a clear slate on this. For me, Don wins because of the closing argument. He did a better job on listing why it's good for kids itself. There's a lot more precision in his explanations. He listed a lot more stuff. So for me, Don wins this round.
Okay, so the first vote goes to Don. Jake, over to you. Who gets your vote and what was the main selling point?
I got Don too. He hit that anti-bullying line, which is great for kids, the visual effects, the creatures, and the line that really killed it for me was the Rocky for kids line.
Okay, all right. Thank you, guys. I'm going to go ahead and put you in the back and bring the competitors back on screen as we'll jump here into question number 3 of this matchup. And we are going to be moving on to again, we just had the Oscars happen. We talked about Christian Bale, who's like an Oscars regular at this point. He might as well have a seat just permanently booked somewhere near the front row for himself. Somebody who's never gotten much love from the Oscars, despite the fact that there are a lot of people who would back him up in certain areas, is Mr. Kevin Smith, who definitely is not an Oscars favorite, but he is a lot of people's favorites. So the question here is, what is the best film directed by Kevin Smith? Just the entire filmography, pick the best one. And we have some picks here, so we're going to go and get into it. Dawn, I'm going to go to you first. The timer will be up on screen, and it is yours to start when you begin speaking.
So I went with a movie that I really love from Kevin Smith. I think it's actually one of his best movies that he has made, and that's why I picked it. I went with Reboot, Jay and Silent Bob Reboot. I love the fact that he wrote this movie for Jay because Jay became a father, and it's something that he never, would have thought his best friend of all those years, the crazy Jay Muse that we know, becoming a father and being, in his opinion, one of the best fathers. So I love the fact that he wrote this movie for them to show Jay as a father and just show how he is. And I actually think this is one of Jay's best performances as Jay. So yeah, I think Reboot is his best directed movie. It's the culmination of his career, and it's something that he really put a lot of heart and tears and sweat into. And he did it for, I think, a great reason to tribute to a best friend.
And time. All right. And then Dawn, back over to you. Who gets your, you're not voting, you're debating. What's your pick? Go ahead.
I went with Chasing Amy. And the big reason why I went with Chasing Amy is because I do find that it winds up tackling so many different issues, not only when it comes to exploration of sexuality, but also when it comes to insecurity, when it comes to the exploration of friendships and what they can wind up meaning to one another. It winds up holding a place amongst Kevin Smith's filmography as arguably his most mature film. I think that you probably picked the other one where the maturity is probably closest to, maybe not quite there, but closest to. Chasing Amy also has tremendous performances when it comes to Ben Affleck, when it comes to Jason Lee. Even the monologue that Kevin Smith winds up giving himself in the diner is absolutely tremendous when he's talking about Chasing Amy. So overall, I would say that Chasing Amy is Kevin Smith's best film.
All right, and that is time. No, nobody picked Tusk? No one picked Tusk? All right, I think you guys just both lost the point with Jake back there. That said, though, we're going to go over to you, Dawn. Time starts when you begin speaking.
So, yeah, I love this movie for a lot of reasons. Again, as I mentioned, it's a tribute to a best friend. It also is really funny. He actually really, again, Kevin Smith can be crazy. He could really give us some funny movies. I think one of his funniest movies overall is the first Jay and Silent Bob movie. It's just a great one-liner movie. But this one has everything that Kevin Smith sort of is as a person too. It has the heart, the deep heart that he has as a person. Anybody that watches Kevin Smith's interviews or anything like that knows. It has all the great people back. This was the first movie in over a decade that him and Affleck actually did together. So this was a reunion of him and Affleck. And Chasing Amy, it just doesn't hold up for me over time. I love the story, but that movie doesn't end. It just ends. It really just ends. There's no conclusion. It just kind of so I don't like that. I don't like that he made that choice with the characters to go in that way. And I understand, but but it's a very outdated movie. It just doesn't hold up now. I don't think as one of his best movies. I mean, I still think I put Clerks over this. I still think I put Dogma over this even. So for me though, Reboot is him having fun with a premise of reboots and stuff like that, but also giving us a heartfelt story of Jason Mewes and his daughter Harley having this great father and daughter sort of reunion and story that lets them both sort of have great moments in his best movie, I think.
And time. All right, Sean, back over to you.
Just to address the way that it ends and how it just ends. Part of that is because not all exits are made equal. Some things are very unsatisfying when it comes to the way people exit our lives. And part of the reason why that works so well is because that is something that a lot of people wind up experiencing in terms of the end of a relationship or the way things wind up manifesting themselves at the end. As far as Jay and Silent Bob Reboot goes, I enjoy it from the perspective of being a Kevin Smith film, like, being a Kevin Smith fan overall. But the thing about it is, I don't think it's even the best Jay and Silent Bob movie. I think that's Strike Back, because as much as you do have some heartfelt moments in Reboot, Strike Back is infinitely funnier. It's more quotable. And on top of that, you still have that, that friendship as the linchpin of that film. Overall, Chasing Amy, I don't really think it is outdated. At this point, when it comes to people, in the modern day, people exploring their sexuality, it's a film to go back to into the 90s and actually see like, oh, wow, we were at least making progress back then when it comes to, sort of what is now a more modern day discussion. So overall, I don't think that it is dated in the way that you say that it is. As far as your film goes, it does have some really nice heartfelt moments. So does mine. So overall, I'm going to concede the rest of my time because I don't want to say too much. I want to actually save it for the debate.
I was muted, but you know what's up. Don, over to you.
No.
Fucking Christ. Haven't we done this 100 fucking times? All right, we're going into the 4-minute open discussion. Timer starts when the first person speaks.
Yeah, I think, yes, Jay and Silent Bob, the first one, obviously, is one of his funniest movies. Nobody would deny that. And again, like I said, I think I prefer that movie. But again, we're talking about what's his best directed movie. And like you said, this is a much mature Kevin Smith telling this story. And I do genuinely like that when we have all the silly movies from Kevin Smith that we have. Chasing Amy is outdated. There's a lot of, and again, I don't want to repeat them, but there's a lot of misogyny. And again, I don't think he was writing it from that perspective, being that way, but he was sort of telling the story of the 90s at that point where we were as a society, and the things that we were doing and saying that are very outdated for this time. And again, nothing against him as a director or anything, but it's definitely a movie of its time, where I feel like this is him actually being able to tell a story that is near and dear to him, like Clerks was. Clerks was, that was him growing up, working in a convenience store, having stories about the Death Star and who works on it and that kind of crap. And so this is sort of him going back to that, but even deeper as a director, in my opinion, because like I said, he wanted to tell this story about how Jay became a father and how he's so great at it, and where he sort of was in his life. This was really great for him to sort of come back and be able to do this, and for him to get to see it. He said he cried every time that they were together on screen, him and Harley, because it was just so great seeing Jay be a father, even to his daughter. It was so great to see him, how great he was as a father.
That is okay. That's very nice. I mean, at the end of the day, for me, what works about Chasing Amy is the fact that it is a pretty streamlined story overall, as opposed to Jay and Silent Bob reboot, which really
He's
does
just trying to steal her the whole time, and she doesn't. Oh,
hold on a second.
Sure.
As opposed to reboot, which really does begin to feel disjointed because of the fact that he's trying to shoehorn in these different characters from his past films. Like it can really feel distracting when that winds up happening. It feels more like a greatest hits, kind of like him going back to the well of things that did work without really like it feeling organic. You know what I mean? As opposed to Chasing Amy, which does feel like an organic film with its through line the entire time, up until its conclusion. Whether you feel it's satisfactory or not, that's really dependent on where you're coming from, from that perspective. But yeah, at the end of the day, just did these things need to happen in Jay and Silent Bob reboot that do happen? Whether it be, Val Kilmer showing up as, in the Blunt Man and Chronic thing, him and Melissa Benoist. It's like, does it really need to be here? It does feel very shoehorned in at the end of the day, like scenes like that. But
I won't argue it's still a Kevin Smith movie. I mean, he does that in every movie. Chasing Amy, he shoehorns people in too, and not to the same extent, but he definitely shoehorns people in. And Affleck really is the best part of that movie. And the whole time he's kind of a douche. He's just trying to steal Amy. I mean, he's just trying to steal her. It doesn't. To me, it's just. Again, I think it's one of his better attempts at a good movie early in his career, but I do think it falls short when you compare it to some of the other things that he made. I mean, even Jay and Silent Bob, I think, has a lot more heart than that movie did at that point in his career. And that's a silly, silly movie. But these characters are silly in general. So yeah, when we go back to seeing them, of course it's going to be silly. But again, the heart is there. The story is there. The heart of what he wanted to tell with this crazy ride that they go on again is there. So as far as a coherent story, I do believe it's there.
And time. All right. And so we're going to go into the 1 minute closings. Dawn, you are back up first with reboot. Time starts when you begin speaking.
So again, reboot is Kevin Smith having a lot of fun with a type of reboot movies that he generally likes to make fun of, but he wanted to tell it in a way that was new and still doing it at the same time, which is even better, where he is poking fun at something that he is also doing, which I love. It's very meta in that sense. And again, we get the reunion with him and Ben. We have this great heartfelt story, I think, between Jay and Harley, which really plays out through the second half of the movie. And just, I think this movie hits all the beats of what you want from a directed movie. Again, it's a Kevin Smith movie. You're going to get the Kevin Smith-isms. You're going to get all the cameos. You're going to get all the craziness. But I think the heart is there more than Chasing Amy, where Chasing Amy is just sort of an outdated and kind of misogynistic movie at this point, looking back again at the times that it was made.
And time. All right. And then Sean, back over to you. You have the final minute of the round when you begin speaking.
I mean, you can say that it's a misogynistic film. I haven't really heard anything to back that up within the argument. But when it comes to Chasing Amy, it shows Kevin Smith's ability to try to mature as a filmmaker. And on top of that, his ability to tell a fully coherent story while still maintaining some of the Kevin Smith isms. You know, prior to making Chasing Amy, he was just coming off of Mallrats, which was a crazy, wild ride for anybody that's wound up watching it. And for him to jump from that to Chasing Amy immediately afterwards, and for him to try and take on the challenges of someone exploring their sexuality, somebody exploring, you know, what it means to be in a relationship with somebody else, the insecurities that come with being with somebody who's been in a same-sex relationship. Those are themes that don't often get explored, you know, even in today's films. So for that, I think Kevin Smith wound up really bringing the heart and the soul and the thoughtfulness to Chasing Amy that it needed.
And time. All right. Another excellent round, guys. I'm going to go ahead and sit you both in the back and bring in our judges for this one. Jake, I'm going to go to you first this time around, so as concise as you can get for me, and what was the main selling point?
Yeah, this is a weird argument. Whoever would have thought Chasing Amy versus Reboot would occur. I'm gonna go Don on this one for Reboot. He pointed out the misogyny and that like Ben is kind of a douche and that he's trying to steal Amy or Alyssa, as he put it. But the reboot side, the heart, the sweat, the tears, the reunited with Ben that he pointed out, the best performance from Jay that he pointed out, and how emotional it made Kevin himself, kind of. So Don got it on hyping up Reboot as well.
And for me,
Frenchie, down to you.
Yeah, and for me, whereas first two rounds were pretty equal, this round was pretty lopsided. For me, Sean wins because at every argument that Don put in, Sean, for me, rebucked it pretty easily. And one point he said, not exits are made equal, which is true. It's a lot more real life. He made a better argument. Although I'm a bigger fan of Reboot, I like his substantiality in his arguments. And I didn't find Don's arguments about misogynistic and not in the times anymore valid, because it's a reflection of his own time. We're not supposed to be looking at the movies in today's day view. We're supposed to look at when it's made, right? So for me, it didn't hold up his argument.
Okay, which means it is split 1-1, so it will come down to me for this one. And I think Don did a good job at arguing, maybe if you're a Kevin Smith fan, why Reboot is a more sentimental film and why it may connect to you more than Chasing Amy might. But I do think Sean made the argument for overall what is the better film. I think, again, yeah, the biggest hits that Don had against it were talking about the misogyny and the homophobia that's within the film. And again, it is to each and every person, but I've heard this film debated before, and unfortunately I've heard that concept debated better in other matches. I just don't think there was enough to back it up, whereas I think Sean not only supported the Kevin Smith part of it, but the filmmaking as well behind it to appeal to a better film. I also just want to point out, it's nice that I got to listen to a Kevin Smith debate where I've actually seen both movies. I don't think that's happened so far in the history of this show, including a match where I once had to debate against Red State, a movie that's literally not available anywhere. I didn't win, if it's shocking to anyone. So with that said, I'm going to put you guys in the back and bring the competitors back forth, as we're going to go ahead and jump into question number 4 here. And we're going to go ahead and jump into this. And we have been building to this question, I think, from the first moment of this match, because we talked about Ford v Ferrari. We talked about fantasy films, which this guy has done. And then we talked about Kevin Smith, and he's worked with Kevin Smith a few times. We're going to Matt Damon, ladies and gentlemen. This is a replay question brought back from a previous match. The question is, what is the worst Matt Damon film of the 2000s? And so for any of you who are new to the show, as both of you guys are to an extent, a replay question is essentially a question that was asked in a previous match where I feel that either the answers that most people would expect to pick were not picked, or there's just enough variation that you could ask it again and get a different debate. So we've brought it back. In this instance, this is brought back from one of our previous title matches between Henry Sanchez and Chad Webb. In that match, it was a blind round question, and they picked The Departed and Invictus, which I think a lot of people would argue are two of his better films from the 2000s. So needless to say, that was an interesting debate to watch them both shit on those movies. Go check that debate out if you have not seen that match yet, because it is a title match, so it means it's a good one. But those were off the table. Not that either of you guys were probably debating picking them. You went with two really bad movies from the 2000s. So I'm curious to see who comes out of it here. Sean, you are up first on this one once again, so I'll throw the timer to you, and it'll start ticking when you begin speaking, sir.
So when you're looking to watch a comedy, what are you really looking for? You're looking for it to be funny, and you're looking for the characters to be engaging. I picked Stuck on You because, my God, within the first 20 minutes of this movie, they exhaust the gag to the point where you don't give a shit about this movie and you have another hour and 40 minutes left of it. It is horrible. It's just, it literally is. Every joke is, well, what's a weird situation we could put conjoined twins into? Well, one of them's an actor. Oh, they both play hockey, so they're going to be playing goalie and they're going to be in the middle of the net, the both of them. Oh, they own a hamburger joint. I'm going to watch them flip burgers together and make, friggin', like a million burgers at once because there's two of them stuck together at the fucking point. By the time you get out of that first 20 minutes of that movie, you are exhausted. Do not care about it.
All right, that is time. I'm going to take...
Okay, so I went with a movie that just, man, I don't even know where to start with this movie. It's so horribly done. It is The Brothers Grimm with Heath Ledger and Matt Damon. And man, the accents are bad. The story is flimsy at best. Has the most ridiculous special effects I've ever seen. They're these weird ancient ghost hunters that cause these or set up these traps and little ghosts and goblins in these places and then go in and say they'll solve the problem. And then they're finally called to this weird town that has actual ghosts and ghouls, and it's just such an incoherent story. The Wicked Queen is somehow Sleeping Beauty and Rapunzel. There's a weird poop monster, mud monster thing that turns into the gingerbread man. Peter Stormare is a villain in this, and how do you make him horrible as a villain? There is just not one good performance. There's not one good story beat in this movie.
And time. All right, so we have Stuck on You versus Brothers Grimm. We're going to go back over to you, Sean. 2 minutes on the clock when you begin speaking.
I mean, the thing is with the Brothers Grimm that I actually at least enjoy is actually the fact that there is that Terry Gilliam flair to it. It does still have his set design, his clear markings on that film. And anytime I go into a film like that, I at least know that I'm going to enjoy visually what's going on. And on top of that, I at least enjoy the chemistry between Matt Damon and Heath Ledger way more than I enjoyed the chemistry between Matt Damon and Greg Kinnear, which is non-existent. And on top of that, as I've stated before, the joke just dies. And then you're just left with sheer boredom and then some of the most random cameos of all time. Like the fact that they got Meryl Streep, like the Meryl Streep, to show up for a cameo for fucking Stuck on You is beyond me. Absolutely beyond me. So, as I've said before, it really comes down to the fact that, like, by the time, like, what is meant to be the emotional crux of the movie, which is the two conjoined twins, being removed from one another, you're just like, I'm over this. I'm over this. I've been over this for so long at this point that I do not care. Okay. And by the end of the film, they're literally still strapped. They strap each other to one another just because they can't change the way that they've been for this entire time, even though they've already done it. So they just completely go back on everything that they've been trying to do for the past, hour of the film. It's exhausting. The characters are completely forgettable. The dialogue is stilted. There is not a single joke that winds up landing in this movie whatsoever. At least with the Brothers Grimm, I still have that Terry Gilliam flair, which I can like at least somewhat get through watching it. Plus, it at least has a Heath Ledger performance as well.
And time. All right, we're going to go back over to you, Dawn. You have 2 minutes on the clock.
So I would agree with you. Stuck on You is not a great movie. It definitely does not hold up. It definitely does not any pretty much redeeming part of it. But The Brothers Grimm was a movie that really could have been good. We could have got a mini franchise out of this. Maybe we could have got 2 or 3 movies, because the Grimm stories are the basis of all of our fairy tales. And they're actually very interesting stories. And then we would have got Heath Ledger and Damon back then in their prime and been able to do 2 or 3 of these movies and really got good movies out of this. This franchise, it would have been great. And the fact that they just completely tried to jam every storyline that they ever wrote into this one movie and just completely make this jumbled mess of crap put together. Like I said, the effects are horrible. They do not hold up at all. Over and over again, they fall short. The Queen falling apart into glass, and the weird flying fight scene where they're trying to stab each other, to the trebuchet where they're trying to get into the tower in the first place. Like I said, back to the gingerbread man. He's a weird mud monster that turns into the gingerbread man. It's just so bad. And again, Peter Stormare, he's been in so many great movies, and he's such a great villain that it's hard to make him a bad villain. And man, is he hard. He's so mustache twirling and just, oh man, just completely. Then we have this weird torture scene where there's an orchestra playing in the background. And let me tell you, this is one of the most off-putting and out-of-place scenes ever put in a movie. I just don't understand. It almost turned into a parody movie, like Men in Tights type parody movie. It's just so weird. Nothing holds up in this movie. Stuck on You, yeah, it's not a great movie, but this movie really had potential and just fell short.
And time. All right, so we're going to go into the 4-minute open discussion here. The timer will pick back up when the first competitor speaks.
The thing about Stuck on You, and it almost goes to your point in a way, is the potential of something. When you are limited by the things that you have to do, you have to get really creative. And by literally just throwing them into every single scenario over and over and over again, it doesn't necessarily demonstrate creativity. They just shoot their fucking wad, and none of the things that they wind up doing stick. By the way, at least when it comes to Terry Gilliam, there is always that element of like weird, absurdist comedy, because I mean, he's part of the Monty Python troupe. You know what I mean? Like, there is always that element to his films. They are bizarre in nature. If you walked into a Terry Gilliam movie and not expecting it to be somewhat strange and mildly comedic, then I mean, I don't really know what to tell you. As far as Stuck on You goes, I walked into a Farrelly Brothers movie. Those are the same guys that did Kingpin. Those are the same guys that did There's Something About Mary. There is no reason for this not to be funny. Greg Kinnear has shown over time that he is a spectacular comedic actor, and he is utterly wasted. And Matt Damon as well. Matt Damon can be absolutely hysterical when given the right role. It's just none of these things wound up working. You know what I mean? Like the fact that they share a liver together, and that's why Greg Kinnear is so much older than him. And it's just like, it just feels like such a fucking placeholder for like just.
Yeah, but I just feel like there's so many of these movies. There's so many of these movies that are just like this, where they try to take a premise and it just is, it's not funny. It's not a funny premise. The movie really shouldn't have been made in the first place. It's just not a funny thing to try to tackle. And like you said, the performances, of course, they fall short because nobody can take this movie seriously. Yeah. The Brothers Grimm actually had potential as a good movie. They could have really went somewhere with this. You have the Rapunzel story that they could have told eventually if they didn't shoehorn it in with the Sleeping Beauty, Wicked Queen storyline. Somehow mash that together. like I said, the weird stuff with the gingerbread man just does not hold up. And you can't say that Peter Stormare is not a great villain usually. And the fact that he is so much that just sits there, he might as well just do this the whole time. I mean, he really is that bad in this movie. Damon and Legend don't have great chemistry. They're very awkward around each other in this movie a lot. And that's not really the characters. They are supposed to be brothers that, really care about each other. And they're very awkward in their interactions in this movie.
I think we can both agree that in both our films, neither of them feel like brothers in either.
Yeah, no, absolutely
like
not.
in either film
no.
whatsoever. But just
Right.
to kind of talk to your point about potential, though, like when you have a film like, for example, Tape by Richard Linklater, that's a film that takes place in one room. So the amount of interactions that have to wind up happening, how creative you have to get, winds up, becoming paramount within a film like that. When you have a situation where two actors are conjoined, you have to find really interesting ways to make that funny. And that's where this film utterly fails. At the end of the day, it's not about what film had more potential to go on and do something else. It's about what film is worse. And objectively, with how long of a runtime my film has after it's completely played out, it's a disaster. Like, it is a complete and utter disaster.
It is, but again, I do think to some extent it does matter whether there could have been a because everybody wants to make money and they don't make movies for no reason. I mean, but yeah, it is to an extent for that reason. But again, the premise of this, there is so many stories that they could have told off of this movie, and for them to just sort of jumble everything together and try to jam it into one movie and make it just this incoherent mess of a story, I think really hurt the movie overall.
And time.
Sorry, I wanted to give you 30 seconds to talk.
No.
I didn't want to be fucking bulldozing that whole round.
It's all good. All good.
All right, guys. So we do have 1 minute left on the round for each of you. Sean, you are back up first, so you have a minute. Time starts when you begin speaking.
Look, as I've said before, it is a premise that literally could have been really, really funny if you were creative enough to do something with it. And in a situation where you have two really great comedic directors that have a pedigree to do stuff like this, there's no reason why this film shouldn't have been actually funny. You know what I mean? But it's just such a colossally wasted opportunity that by the time you're done, you don't give a shit about the movie. You don't give a shit about the characters. You don't care about absolutely anything. You are just literally sitting there waiting for it to be done. If you even made it through the movie. If someone walked out on Stuck on You, I would not blame them whatsoever. Like I said with the Brothers Grimm, at least you do have that strange Terry Gilliam absurdist sort of, environment. And when it comes to Peter Stormare, he could be twirling his mustache, but once again, that is kind of perfect for a Terry Gilliam style movie. You know what I mean? It is meant to be absurdist in many ways. But yeah, that's my point.
And time. All right, Dawn, back over to you. Final minute of the round when you begin speaking.
So Stuck on You it's a failure that a lot of movies that try to do that type of comedy, / let's make fun of this group of people or this type of, person movies that just, it's not great. Those movies flop so much. This is something that I think could have been actually a good story if it was told right. It's a movie that is based on all of our childhood, stories that we grew up with, and just the way that this was written and put together is such a bad way of doing it. I think Sleepy Hollow did it later in such a better way. It's almost the same type of story, and it comes back, and it's such a better way of doing it. So this movie falls short on so many levels, not to mention, like I said, just the horrible effects and all of that together, I think makes The Brothers Grimm overall the worst movie for Matt Damon in the 2000s.
All right. Guys, another excellent round there from the both of you. I'm going to go ahead and put you in the back as we go ahead and make the decision here. And as I bring the judges in, Frenchie, you're up first this time around in the rotation. So who gets your vote? And as concise as you can give it to me, what sold you?
Yeah, for me, that would be Sean, because oddly enough, Don's explanation actually made me want to check the movie out. Because yes, it sounds weird, it sounds kind of like all over the place, but again, it sounds like a Terry Gilliam movie, and it made me want to watch it. Whereas Sean explanation on Stuck on You, I never seen it, but I kind of understand why it sounds like a bad movie. So for that reason, Sean wins.
Okay, Jake, down to you. Same question.
So this is what it would have been like if I didn't knock out Richie. I got Sean here on this one. I liked what Don said about the having potential, but then Sean totally countered it by saying it doesn't matter if it had potential. We're talking about what is the worst movie, and he laid out why Stuck on You is terrible and why Brothers Grimm maybe isn't that bad, whereas Don said nothing to the potential positives of Stuck on You.
Okay. So. All right, judges, thank you guys so much. I'm going to go ahead and put you in the back, and I will go ahead and bring the competitors on screen. Guys, it is a damn shame you're both so good at this so quickly, because we are going to go into the blind round. Here's how the blind round works for anyone who may not know. So this is a question that is completely random. It's not connected to anything else that we previously talked about, and they have no idea what is about to come at them. Another element to the randomness of this is they are not going to be given a question. They are instead going to be giving a generalization. So my classic example has always been, name me a Will Smith movie. Then he went and popularized himself in a very different way, but I'm keeping my example. With that said, they'll get the generalization. They will name a movie that matches to it. They'll get a few minutes off screen to prep their arguments. But even if they feel that their answer doesn't quite match the question, they'll have to do their best to argue for it. And we have seen plenty of times so far that it doesn't matter what the answer is, it is about the argument, so it can be done. With all that said, though, the actual debate will work the exact same way, just so we don't switch up the rules too much on these guys. So do you guys have any questions? Or are you ready to go?
Good to go.
All right, guys. So for your generalization, and you can just put in your answer when you're ready. The question is, pick an MCU film from Phase 4. And if you do need to look up just to make sure you're clear exactly what falls under that, go ahead.
Okay.
Phase 4 films only? Okay. I want to go super safe here. Screw it. Black Panther Forever. Wakanda Forever.
Okay. Black Panther, Wakanda Forever.
Spider-Man No Way Home.
All right. At least I have a chance if he says worst.
All right.
On that one. If it says worst, I'm screwed.
You're never screwed in the Movie Battleground. There's always a chance. That's the question is, what is the worst film of Phase 4 in the MCU?
I knew it.
So with that, you guys are going to have a couple of minutes to put your arguments together. Guys, we will be back in just a moment. We are back here and heading into the blind round. So if anyone forgets the question that we asked 20 seconds ago, we did ask them to name a film from the MCU Phase 4. The question is, what is the worst film of Phase 4? A phase just passed, and I mean, based on public consensus, maybe looking a bit better compared to Ant-Man? I don't really know. I guess we'll see where Marvel goes from here. But as Phase 4 is complete, what was the worst project? I think we can all agree these weren't the worst projects, but they're going to have to try and sell it the best that they can. So with that said, Don, because you did answer first, you're going to go first on this question. I'll give you the timer. I'm going to say for a second match in a row, you guys are proven to be some of the best rookies we've had in a while. So best of luck to both of you. Time starts when you begin speaking, Don.
Okay. So I went with Black Panther, Wakanda Forever. Look, I love the first movie. I think it's probably one of my top 5 MCU movies. we all know the special effects doesn't hold up in that movie. The special effects, again, do not hold up in this movie, transferring over. We get sort of a weird Shuri storyline, which doesn't quite make sense. I still think Okoye was the better pick for Black Panther, with Shuri being sort of the, man in the chair type person. The side performances are not great. All the side characters that we get from the first one are just kind of one note in this, and they don't really get much to do. Honestly, the best performance overall is Angela Bassett. Namor is not great. His motivations are not, in my opinion, crystal clear. Kind of understand where he's coming from, but if he just stays to himself, kind of no issue. The underwater effects are really bad, especially compared to what we just had with Avatar.
And time. All right, we're going to go over to you, Sean. 1 minute on the clock.
Okay. So, why is No Way Home the worst film of Phase 4? Well, there's a few reasons for it, particularly for the fact that it's so reliant on nostalgia to the point where it uses it as a crutch. If this film did one thing truly, truly poorly, though, out of almost anything, I think it would have to be the fact that it really introduced the multiverse in the way that we know it now. And it wound up creating some of the most convoluted, confusing storylines going forward throughout Phase 4. And so because of that and the damage it wound up doing to future Marvel properties, I would say that's why it would have to be the worst. I can see the rest of my time.
All right, so that is the opening minute there. Black Panther Wakanda Forever versus Spider-Man No Way Home. Don, we're going to go back over to you for your 2-minute period. The timer will start for you when you begin speaking.
So I think where Wakanda Forever falls short for me, at least, is I don't think this has much to do with the overall MCU. This was sort of a movie that, excuse me, they made to kind of just tell us, Chad, he's not here anymore. Black Panther's not here anymore. And as I think they did it as respectfully as they could and handled it the best way they could, I really don't have an issue with the way they handled it. It does just sort of feel hollow with him dying off screen from this mysterious, virus or whatever it is, and not really getting a good handle on that situation. Also, like I said, they introduced young T'Challa, so we're setting up the young Avengers in this movie. That's really the only other point to this movie, is we're setting up young T'Challa and the young Avengers. And I think Namor's story actually fits better if it's an Avenger movie where, yeah, he's going to come and attack the surface world, and the Avengers have to step in. This isn't a definitely not a Shuri as Black Panther level villain, and he's really just sort of wasted and dumbed down to the point where he's defeated by words at the end. It's really just words that defeat him. And he really was good in this movie, but the storyline itself, I don't think makes sense for the character and what they could have done with that character. I also don't think Martin Freeman was great in this movie. I don't think he really had a point in this movie other than the fact that he was the middleman for them to go between. Why did they need him at all? This was apparently a fight between Namor and Wakanda. Or Atlantis and Wakanda, sorry. So I don't understand that. And Angela Bassett, again, best performance in the movie probably, and she only gets a couple scenes, and it's very sad overall.
And time. All right, Sean, back over to you. 2 minutes on the clock.
Just to address something about Black Panther Wakanda Forever and its side characters not being memorable, I think Winston Duke in that movie takes such care with his, the dialogue that he's given and the moments that he's given, and his performance is tremendous. Okoye is absolutely fucking great in that movie. Her turn to become a Midnight Angel is badass. And on top of that, if we're going to go off of supporting characters, Angela Bassett got nominated for an Oscar for that movie. That being said, if you want to talk about an absolutely wasted character, Aunt May's entire story basically just happens completely off screen. She is literally just Peter Parker's hot aunt pretty much up until the point where she dies. She's given so little to do, and to give an actress of Marissa Tomei's caliber that little to do just seems like such an extraordinary waste. But as I said before, the film is so reliant on nostalgia and you being invested in these other universes of Spider-Man, that it, once again, to kind of go to a point that I had almost earlier about about Kevin Smith, it really feels like a greatest hits. It just feels like what you do when you are absolutely out of ideas. And from that point onwards, really, with them introducing the multiverse, it creates these gigantic, crazy storylines that really plagued Phase 4, and that's why it's been the least popular of all of them. It's almost the idea of the road to hell is paved on good intentions, where, yes, they were trying to do something really great with the Spider-Man film, but it wound up completely destroying the rest of everything around it. And so as a byproduct of that, it has to be the worst movie. That's my time.
All right. Sorry about the late draw there on the end timer. We're going to go ahead and jump into the open discussion. The timer will start back up when the first competitor speaks.
I don't think the multiverse argument holds up because Loki did it great. I think everybody would say that Loki's great, and it tackles the multiverse pretty well. The reason that Doctor Strange and other movies that use the multiverse, aren't as great is because of other things, but it's not the multiverse itself that does that. But what we do get from the multiverse and Spider-Man No Way Home is we get Dr. Octavius back. We get a great performance from Dafoe again as Goblin. We get all three Spider-Mans on the same screen together, which is one of the best performances or best moments in comic book movies. That fight scene at the end is actually really good. It's much better than the ones that come before it. Also, I think the way we introduce the new the two older Spider-Men in with Mary J. And I'm blanking on his name now, but Nate having the ring and finding out about his powers, I think is really cool that he has connections to that.
I mean, that comes absolutely out of nowhere. No, that's the thing. That is so distracting in that movie. The fact that all of a sudden he just waves his hand and just all of a sudden has a problem. I know it's a bit of a nitpick, but that is so out of fucking nowhere.
But if we're talking about what fails, I mean, look, do you really think going forward that we're really going to care about that T'Challa's son that we have no idea who he is going to be in the Young Avengers? I could care less.
Okay, for starters, I loved that moment. That entire scene was absolutely fantastic, and the way
the scene is emotional. Yes,
the way Letitia Wright plays that off is unbelievable. To your point about Namor being a better foil for the Avengers, he's not an Avengers level threat. Like, you don't need all of Kamar-Taj and all of Wakanda and all the Avengers and the Guardians of the Galaxy to come and try and stop, friggin' Telecon. You know what I mean? It is
if he wants to take over the world. I mean, he's talking about attacking on all fronts, all over the world, all at once. They're going to be spread out all over the world fighting these battles.
It would have taken Thor and Iron Man. We're talking Thor and the Hulk and all these other different world level destroyers basically to come down and take down Namor and the Telecon. Wakanda seemed to do just fine, even towards the end there. But at the end of the day, I want to kind of move away from what makes, my film good and actually talk about what makes your film fucking fantastic. Black Panther Wakanda Forever is a celebration of life and examination of loss and how it can affect people differently. Telecon is an example of Wakanda, what Wakanda could be if they were consumed by their hatred for the rest of the world and what they could potentially lead to. It's emotional lows of the loss of Queen Ramonda, T'Challa, and the near destruction of Wakanda at its lowest points, coupled with the highs of meeting T'Challa's son, Shuri's ascension as Black Panther, and Okoye becoming the Midnight Angel. Those are all amazing things. It's a stark reminder of how we deal with grief and what we have to overcome. Winston Duke's character, once again, absolutely phenomenal. Angela Bassett, nominated for an Oscar for your movie. Its self-contained nature is actually a breath of fresh air for Marvel films, because we do get too connected to this overarching world, and the fact that it is about Wakanda more than anything else really makes the film shine.
And I would actually say that your argument against Aunt May being not a pivotal part in this movie is wrong, because that right there shows him that he can't keep losing people close to him, and that is what ultimately leads him to make the decision.
I didn't say that she wasn't a pivotal part. I said that she's been wasted throughout the series of films, and this film really kind of continues to do that up until her death. When you have an actress,
but her death is the most important part.
And time. All right, so we're going to go ahead and jump into the closers. Dawn, you are up first, so the timer starts for you when you begin speaking.
Yeah, just finishing on that point. And again, I would agree she's wasted overall, but I do think that hits hard enough in that movie that it really does make an emotional impact on you through the rest of that movie, because he has to basically wipe their memories too at the end. Nate and MJ's memories of knowing him, because he knows now what that loss can mean going forward. So I don't think that's a great argument. But again, Wakanda Forever, it doesn't hold up for a lot of reasons, mainly because of the storylines. Shuri is not the Black Panther. Okoye should have definitely taken over that mantle. Martin Freeman is there for no reason. Namor is not really a great threat, which he could have been, portrayed as the best threat that he could have been. And overall, I don't believe that introducing young T'Challa, as it is a great moment for fans overall, I don't think it means much going forward, because we don't really get T'Challa back as Black Panther, which is what we wanted.
And time. All right, Sean, over to you. Final minute of the round when ready.
So once again, because Aunt May was wasted in those other films, for me, her death almost kind of has a hollowness to it, because I haven't had the time to actually connect with this Aunt May. She's in very fleeting moments throughout the entire series. Once again, these multiverse events wind up leading to confusing plot lines throughout the rest of the MCU, and so it winds up hurting the rest of the properties way more than it needs to. And as far as Shuri, her becoming the Black Panther, it actually just completely made sense narratively. Narratively, she's the only person that could develop the heart-shaped herb alongside, what's her name? I can't remember right now. She's the only one that could develop it. And because they're in a pinch, because they're at war with Telecom, or they are about to be, she doesn't have time to run tests. She has to test it on herself. And because of that, as a byproduct, she becomes the Black Panther, and she holds the mantle with honor, and she does a great job.
And time. All right, guys, that was an excellent round. Unfortunately, though, only one person can win, so I'm going to sit you guys in the back to see where it goes. I'm going to go ahead and bring in the judges. And Jake, I'm going to go to you first. Who gets your vote, and what was the main selling point?
I got Don on this one. He hit more specifics of the film itself for me. Like, Okoye should have been Black Panther. Namor does suck, blah, blah, blah. Bassett was kind of wasted. All of this and that. And then he did also throw out the good about Spider-Man. So I thought Don gave a pretty balanced, good argument there.
Okay, so the first vote goes to Don. Frenchie, down to you.
And my vote actually goes for Don as well, and less about the arguments Don did, although he did shoot back a lot of the things that Sean was saying. For me, Sean shot himself in the foot by trying to say how Black Panther was a good movie compared to why Spider-Man, his Spider-Man choice is not a good movie. He had a lack of arguments. It showed he had a lack of arguments, so he tried more to put a spot on Black Panther, and that's not the assignment. So I find he did not do the assignment properly, hence why he failed.
Okay. All right. I'm going to go ahead and sit you guys in the back. Thank you for being here. Cuz your winner with a final score of 3-2, it is Don Tucker picking up his first win. Don, congratulations, man. That was definitely a hard-fought match between you guys. For the second time in a row, again, both of you guys are still newer. Both of you guys had to go to the blind round. This time you're able to just inch out the victory there. How are you feeling?
No, I feel great, man. Sean's a great competitor. He had some great arguments. It was not easy at all. This was a lot of fun, and man, this could have went either way. Easily could have went the other way. So I had so much fun, though. I loved it.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, as somebody who was actively judging this one this time, which I don't always do, obviously, it was every single round. It was a singular line almost that it feels like would stick somebody out just ahead of the other, or a singular point. So it really was that close at times. So obviously you've had two incredibly competitive matches. You're now 1-1. You've probably had a tougher start than a lot of other rookies who have come into the league. How are you feeling going into your third match? Is there anything you're potentially kind of hoping for in terms of how the debate shakes out, or are you just kind of ready for whatever?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I just kind of want to go back now and see where I kind of wasn't as strong, and where I was strong, and just kind of build on that. So, yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to going forward, man, and have another match.
Absolutely. Well, it was great to have you, man. We will see you next time, of course, but till then, I'm going to go ahead and sit you in the back and bring in your opponent. And it's the exact same thing, man. Like, it is tit for tat. Every single little thing that you guys said played into it. And look, I know the feeling personally. It sucks to play that well and still lose. So this is a very facetious question, but how are you feeling right now after a match like that?
I'm all right. Don did a great job. He did a great job. There were certain times where I was like, oh, fuck, that was a good point. I will say I felt really, really good about that first round. Like, I felt really, really good about that one. I felt like I got off the points I needed to. I felt I countered well. It's just, you know what? Sometimes it's who you get to judge. It's what speaks to them. You know what I mean?
Right.
And, it just didn't go my way. It's really,
I always say to people, like, because obviously in terms of like a lot of people compete in trivia, and it's very easy to judge the quality of someone at trivia because you can just look at the score and say, well, that's how they did.
Yeah.
But with debate, it's much more nuanced because there is so much of a random factor that goes into it. It is what you say, what they say, because you can't necessarily know 100% what they're going to say, who's judging it, how it hits them. All of it is, there's a lot of variables that go into it. And all I can say is at 1-1, again, you guys are alongside Joe, who started with Don. Like, this is probably some of the best rookie matches I've seen in a long time. I think last year, once we got past the initial beginning of the league, a lot of the rookies who came in last year, probably outside of John Marr, kind of took a bit to get going and find some footing. You guys have come in and almost immediately done really, really well in win and loss. So I hope you take that with you. Obviously, with your schedule, as we've talked about, it may be a bit before we see you again, but is there anything you're kind of looking forward to when you get that next matchup?
Honestly, it's always fun being here. Yeah, like you said, I don't know how much I'm going to be able to do this, but yeah, no, next match out, I just hope to play well. And actually, I've kind of noticed with myself, I kind of just go with it. Like, I don't do a ton of prep for these things, and maybe that's kind of what's biting me in the ass. Like, maybe if I was like, really prepping for this stuff and taking it a little bit more seriously, like the way guys like Chadwick do, clearly, who have like the shit written out and whatnot.
Right.
Yeah, be doing a bit better. But like, but no, honestly, these matches have been a lot of fun. And I kind of like when they're a bit closer somewhat, because it feels like we're actually kind of getting somewhere as opposed to like you just steamroll a person. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
It feels less like that's objectively right, which is kind of a good thing in the conversation about film.
Yeah, I mean, it's some of the weirdest stuff with the league is I think the only people who hate knockout victories more than the people who get knocked out is sometimes the people who won with a knockout. It's this weird thing of like, especially when it comes to opinions, nobody likes feeling like you steamrolled somebody else. Mm-hmm. So, no, you guys put on a great show, sir. Until the next time that we see you, though, take care of yourself, and we will have you back as soon as we can. And guys, again, both of these guys continuing to look good following their debut match. But it is Don who came so close last time, couldn't take it against Joe. He will pull it out here against Sean tonight. And Sean, despite not getting a second win in a row there, puts on a good showing and stands up to that first performance he put in. So I hope both of these guys leave feeling good about their performance tonight. It certainly seems like they will. And I look forward to when we have them both back because, there's been a status quo within the league for the last year and a half or so, where it felt like pretty quickly, the top 10, top 12, so to speak, very much established themselves. And there hasn't been a lot of input. I mean, maybe like in terms of records, Austin Howell is the first person that comes to mind of he started off kind of 50-50 down here, and now he's put himself up in a higher position in the league, going for a number one contenders match. But outside of that, there is not a lot of people who have been able to do it. And I think these guys could definitely upset the status quo if given the opportunity and they take the chance. So with that said, congratulations to both of them on a great game. Congratulations to Dawn on a win. I want to say thank you to Frenchie and Jake for being here tonight, helping me judge this thing. Thank you to all of you for watching at home. Please be sure to rate the video, subscribe to the channel, and stick around for more because we have more Movie Battleground coming every single week, including last week, the title match between Amadou Moses and Jay Burns uploaded. Check that out. And of course, this week we have the number one contenders match, as I aforementioned, between Henry and Austin. So check that out too. On behalf of everyone here, my name is Aaron Knoll. Take care, everybody.